Welcome to Midnight Gavel Stories, where hope is stronger than hate and truth is stronger than fear. Our stories celebrate courage, resilience, and the people who refuse to give up. If that's the kind of content you love, subscribe today, tell us where you're watching from, and enjoy the journey. He thought the garage was the crime scene, but by the time the night was over, it would become the place where his badge began to fall apart. The garage door was only halfway open when the red and blue lights washed across the pale brick walls of 214 Briarwood Lane, turning the quiet suburban street into something that felt colder than winter. Maya Ellison stood just inside the glow, one hand still holding her house keys, the other resting near a leather work bag on the hood of her black SUV. She had not run. She had not shouted. She had not even stepped back. She simply looked at the officer standing in her driveway, as if she were studying a witness who had already made his first mistake. Officer Grant Holloway pointed his flashlight toward her face and said, "Step out of the garage." His voice carried across the manicured lawns, past the mailboxes, past the upstairs windows where curtains moved just enough to prove people were watching. Maya blinked against the light, calm but tired, the kind of tired that came after 12 hours in a federal building where every sentence mattered and every signature could change someone's life. "Officer," she said evenly, "this is my home." Holloway did not lower the flashlight. Behind him, his patrol car idled at the curb, engine humming, radio whispering codes into the night. A second officer, Brooke Sullivan, stood near the passenger door, younger, quieter, watching the scene unfold with the uncertain stillness of someone who knew something felt wrong but had not yet found the courage to say it. Holloway took one slow step closer. "We received a report of a suspicious person breaking into this garage." Maya lifted the keys slightly, the brass catching the garage light. "With my own keys?" For a second, there was only the soft mechanical groan of the garage motor and the distant bark of a dog from somewhere down the block. Then, Holloway gave a small laugh, not loud enough to be called hostile, but sharp enough to cut. "People have keys to houses they do not own all the time." Maya looked past him toward the house across the street. Karen Whitmore stood behind her front window, phone still in hand, face half hidden behind white blinds. 3 years Maya had lived on that street. 3 years of waving politely, signing for packages, putting out trash bins on Tuesday mornings, paying property taxes, fixing the fence after a storm, and still, one evening in her own garage was enough to turn her into a question mark. Holloway's hand moved to his belt, not as a threat, but as theater, as if the weight of everything he carried was supposed to end the conversation. "Ma'am, I am going to need you to explain why you are inside this residence." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear, in record-keeping. "Before I answer anything else," she said, her voice low and clear, "am I being detained?" Officer Sullivan looked up. Holloway did not like the question. You could see it in his jaw, in the way his shoulders stiffened beneath the uniform, in the way the flashlight stayed fixed on Maya as though light itself could make her smaller. But Maya did not shrink. She stood in her garage, under the warm overhead bulb, beside the SUV registered in her name, in front of the wall where framed degrees sat waiting to be hung after her last renovation. And just above Holloway's head, in the corner near the open garage door, a small security camera blinked red, recording every word. 3 hours earlier, before the patrol car rolled onto Briarwood Lane, and before Officer Grant Holloway decided that suspicion mattered more than proof, Maya Ellison had been sitting inside a sealed conference room in Washington, District of Columbia, listening to men in expensive suits explain why accountability always needed more time. The room had no windows, only polished wood, muted carpet, and a long table covered with folders that carried the weight of ruined careers and buried complaints. Maya sat near the end, back straight, glasses low on her nose, one hand resting on a legal pad filled with clean, deliberate handwriting. Across from her, an assistant director from the Civil Rights Division slid a file toward her and said, "This one keeps coming back to the same county." Maya did not answer right away. She opened the folder and looked at the pattern, not just the words. Traffic stops with no charges. Searches with missing reports. Homeowner complaints marked unfounded before anyone had spoken to the homeowner. Body camera files labeled corrupted. A dozen small doors closed before the truth could walk through them. She had spent most of her career learning that injustice did not always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrived as a checkbox, a delayed response, a badge number typed incorrectly, a supervisor saying there was no evidence while standing in a room full of it. By 6:30 that evening, the meeting ended with the kind of silence that follows a decision no one wants written down too loudly. Maya gathered the files assigned to her, placed them in her leather bag, and signed the custody log with a steady hand. Senior Counsel Maya Renee Ellison, Department of Justice. Her name looked simple on paper, almost ordinary, but behind it were 18 years of courtrooms, investigations, late nights, and families who had trusted her with stories they were afraid to tell anyone else. As she stepped outside, the air felt heavy and damp, the summer heat still clinging to the sidewalks even after sunset. Her phone buzzed twice. One message was from her mother asking if she had eaten. The other was from Deputy Assistant Attorney General Rebecca Sloan. "Call me when you get home." Important development. Maya stared at the screen for a moment, then slipped the phone into her coat pocket. She was too tired to talk from the parking garage, too tired to explain one more thing under fluorescent lights. She wanted her own driveway, her own kitchen, and 10 quiet minutes without someone questioning her right to stand where she already belonged. The drive back took nearly 40 miles, past government buildings, gas stations, long ramps, and dark stretches of road where the city thinned into suburbs. By the time she turned onto Briarwood Lane, the neighborhood looked peaceful in the way expensive. Places always try to look peaceful. Sprinklers clicked softly over trimmed lawns. Porch lights glowed warm. A flag moved gently beside a white columned doorway. Maya pressed the remote clipped to her visor, and her garage door began to rise. She pulled into the driveway, stepped out with her work bag, and paused beside the open garage. That was when Karen Whitmore's curtain shifted across the street. Maya saw it, but she did not react. She had learned long ago that being watched was not the same as being seen. She unlocked the side door, placed one foot inside the garage, and for the first time all day, let her shoulders loosen. Then, somewhere behind her, a phone call was placed, a story was shaped, and a stranger with a badge was sent to question a woman standing on her own property. Briarwood Lane was the kind of street that looked harmless from a distance, the kind real estate agents described with soft words like quiet, established, and desirable. The sidewalks were clean, the lawns were trimmed to a uniform height, and every porch seemed to glow with the warm confidence of people who believed safety belonged to them by default. 2 blocks away, there was a small park with a walking trail and a sign reminding residents to clean up after their dogs. Around the corner, a neighborhood watch sticker was pressed proudly against the glass of the community mailbox. Everything about the place seemed designed to say nothing bad happened here, but Maya Ellison knew better than to trust appearances. She had learned that danger did not always look like broken windows or dark alleys. Sometimes it looked like a smiling neighbor who never invited you inside. Sometimes it sounded like a polite hello that carried a question underneath it. Sometimes it arrived in the form of a phone call made from behind white blinds by someone who had already decided you were out of place. As Maya stepped fully into the garage, the overhead light clicked on and filled the space with a soft amber glow. Her black SUV sat with its driver's side door still open. A stack of moving boxes lined the left wall, each one labeled in her careful handwriting. Casebooks, winter coats, framed degrees. Kitchen overflow. She had lived in the house for 3 years, but her work had kept her so busy that parts of her life were still packed away, waiting for the slower season she kept promising herself would come. Beside the tool bench, a framed photograph leaned against the wall, still wrapped in brown paper. It was a picture of her father standing outside a courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia, wearing a worn navy suit and the tired smile of a man who had believed in justice even when justice had not always believed in him. Maya looked at it for a moment longer than she meant to. Then she set her leather bag on the hood of the SUV and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Her phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. 10 minutes, she told herself. Just 10 minutes of silence. Across the street, Karen Whitmore remained near her window, the glow of her phone lighting the lower half of her face. She had already told the dispatcher there was a suspicious woman at number 214. When asked what made the woman suspicious, Karen paused, looked back toward Maya's garage, and lowered her voice as if the word itself needed protection. She said the woman did not look familiar. She said the garage door was open. She said the woman seemed to be going through things. She did not say that Maya had arrived in a registered vehicle. She did not say Maya had used a remote to open the garage. She did not say that she had seen Maya take mail from that mailbox for years. A story can become dangerous not because of what is added, but because of what is left out. 5 minutes later, headlights appeared at the end of the block, slow and deliberate, turning the corner without sirens. Maya heard the engine before she saw the patrol car, and something inside her went still. Not afraid, not surprised, just still. The kind of stillness that comes when a person recognizes a pattern before it finishes forming. She turned toward the driveway as the cruiser stopped at the curb. Officer Grant Holloway stepped out first, broad-shouldered, expression already set, as though the call had given him all the truth he needed. Officer Brooks Sullivan followed from the passenger side, one hand resting near her. Notepad, eyes moving between the garage, the house number, and Maya. Holloway did not look at the address on the mailbox. He did not ask whether she needed help. He walked up the driveway like a man approaching a problem he had already named. Maya stood beneath the garage light, keys in hand, her work bag behind her, her house around her, and watched him bring judgment to her doorstep before he brought a single question. Holloway stopped just short of the garage threshold, close enough for his shadow to stretch across the concrete floor, but not close enough to notice the framed certificates leaning against the wall behind Maya's SUV. He looked first at the vehicle, then at the shelves, then at Maya, as if he were searching for a version of the scene that matched the suspicion he had brought with him. "Evening," he said, though there was nothing polite inside the word. "We got a call about someone entering this property." Maya kept her keys visible in her right hand. Her left hand remained open at her side. She knew how quickly calm movements could be misread by people who had already chosen fear over facts. "I understand," she said. "I live here." Holloway glanced at the two-story house, then back at her, his face flat with disbelief. "You live here?" The question landed harder than it sounded. Not because of the words, but because of the delay before he said them. That small pause where his eyes traveled over her face, her work clothes, her dark skin, and came back with doubt. Maya had heard that pause before in gated lobbies, courthouse elevators, hotel conference rooms, and neighborhood meetings where people asked what company she worked for before asking her name. She had built an entire life beyond that pause. She had argued before federal judges. She had taken sworn testimony from police chiefs who suddenly forgot their own policies. She had stood with mothers holding folders full of unanswered complaints and promised them she would read every page. Yet here, under the garage light of her own home, she was being asked to prove that her presence was not a mistake. Officer Brooks Sullivan stepped slightly to the side, her eyes moving toward the mailbox at the edge of the driveway. The number 214 was clearly painted in black against white brick. The last name Ellison appeared beneath it in neat metal letters. Sullivan saw it. Maya saw Sullivan see it. Holloway did not look. "Can I see identification?" he asked. Maya slowly reached toward the outer pocket of her work bag. "My driver license is in my wallet," she said carefully. "I'm going to take it out now." "Move slowly," Holloway said. The words were unnecessary. That was what made them heavy. Maya opened the pocket, removed her wallet, and handed over her license without stepping forward. Holloway took it, glanced at the front, and frowned as if the plastic had offended him by confirming her name. "Maya Ellison," he read. "Address matches," Sullivan said quietly from behind him. Holloway did not respond to her. He looked past Maya into the garage again. "Is anyone else inside the residence?" "No," Maya said. "I came home from work about 5 minutes ago." "What kind of work?" he asked. Maya held his stare for one measured second. She could have answered fully. She could have ended the performance with 3 words that would have changed the temperature in the driveway. But experience had taught her something sharper than anger. When a person abuses authority, let them speak long enough to meet the truth on their own record. "Legal work," she said. Holloway gave another small laugh, dry and dismissive. "That is pretty broad." Maya nodded once. "So is suspicious person." The air changed. Sullivan looked down for a moment, hiding a reaction she did not want Holloway to see. Across the street, Karen Whitmore's blinds shifted again. A porch light came on 2 houses down. The neighborhood was waking up, not to help, but to witness. Holloway handed the license back, but his suspicion did not leave with it. If anything, it tightened. He had been given an answer, and he disliked that it was the right one. "Ma'am," he said, his voice cooler now. "Until I can confirm what is going on here, I need you to remain exactly where you are. Maya slipped her license back into her wallet, her expression still composed, her breath slow. Above them, the garage camera continued blinking red. Behind Holloway, Sullivan's body camera captured the mailbox, the matching address, the keys in Maya's hand. In the moment, a simple call for verification became something much more dangerous for the officer who refused to believe the evidence standing in front of him. The first real break in the night came not from a shout, not from a siren, but from one sentence that told Maya exactly what kind of officer she was dealing with. Holloway looked at her license again, then at the clean brick house behind her, then at the black sport utility vehicle in the garage, and said, "People do all kinds of things to look like they belong in neighborhoods like this." The words did not echo loudly, but they did not need to. They landed in the driveway with the weight of every locked door Maya had ever opened with proof in her hand and doubt waiting on the other side. She stared at him, calm enough that it almost made his disrespect more visible. "I belong here because I live here," she said. Holloway tilted his head as if patience were something he was granting her instead of something she was showing him. "That is what we are trying to determine." "No," Maya replied, her voice low, steady, and clear. "That is what I already documented for you." Sullivan shifted her weight near the patrol car. She looked again at the mailbox, at the license in Holloway's hand, at the garage remote clipped to the visor of Maya's vehicle, at the house keys resting against Maya's palm. The facts were not hiding. They were standing in plain view, lined up like witnesses waiting to be called. But Holloway had stopped listening to facts the moment they challenged his first impression. From across the street, Karen Whitmore opened her front door just wide enough to step onto the porch in a pale cardigan, her phone clutched close to her chest. She did not come all the way down the steps. She did not apologize. She simply watched as if the scene in Maya's driveway were confirmation of the fear she had invented. Holloway glanced toward her, then back at Maya. "The caller said you were going through items in the garage." Maya looked over her shoulder at the stacked boxes, the framed photograph, the tool bench, the folded patio chairs, the ordinary clutter of a working woman who had more responsibilities than free weekends. "Those are my items," she said. "In my garage." "You keep repeating that," Holloway said. "Because it remains true." The silence after that sentence was sharp. For a moment, even the police radio seemed quieter. Holloway stepped to the side, trying to see deeper into the garage without crossing the threshold. Maya noticed the movement and raised one hand, not in panic, but as a boundary. "Officer, you do not have my consent to enter my home or my garage." His eyes snapped back to her. There it was again, the irritation. Not because she was loud, because she was correct. Not because she was resisting, because she understood exactly where the line was. Sullivan looked at Holloway, waiting for him to acknowledge it. He did not. Instead, he said, "Most people who have nothing to hide cooperate." Maya let the sentence sit there long enough for the garage camera to preserve it forever. Then she answered, "Most officers who have probable cause do not need to pressure homeowners into giving up their rights." Holloway's face hardened. The neighborhood lights seemed brighter now. More curtains moved. A man walking a golden retriever slowed near the corner and pretended to check his phone. Maya could feel the old familiar theater forming around her, the silent audience, the public doubt, the way everyone waited to see whether she would become smaller. But she did not. Her father's photograph leaned against the wall behind her, still wrapped at the edges, his courthouse smile almost hidden in shadow. Maya thought of him standing in line 40 years earlier just to register for a job that paid less than he deserved, smiling anyway because he believed dignity was not something another person could hand you or take back. She inhaled once, slow and even. Holloway mistook her calm for weakness. "Until I am satisfied this residence is yours," he said. "You are not going anywhere." Maya looked directly into the small black circle of Sullivan's body camera, then back at Holloway. "Then make sure every word after this is accurate." Holloway heard the warning and treated it like defiance. That was the mistake men like him often made when they met someone who knew the rules better than they did. They confused knowledge with attitude. They confused calm with guilt. They confused a woman standing her ground with a woman challenging their power. He handed Maya's license to Sullivan without looking at her and said, "Run it again." Sullivan hesitated. "The address already matches." Holloway turned his head just enough for his silence to become an order. Sullivan took the license and walked back toward the patrol car, but her steps were slower now. She was not simply checking a database. She was trying to understand why a routine verification had become a standoff in a quiet driveway. Maya watched her go, then looked back at Holloway. The flashlight had finally dropped from her face, but the pressure remained. It was in his posture, in the way he blocked the open space between the garage and the driveway, in the way he kept glancing toward the neighbors as though their attention gave him permission to continue. "Is there a reason you are refusing to accept my identification?" Maya asked. Holloway exhaled through his nose. "I am not refusing anything. You have my license. You have the matching address. You have my keys. You have the garage remote in my vehicle. You have the name on the mailbox." She paused, letting each fact settle into the night. "What exactly are you still investigating?" His mouth tightened. For the first time, he looked less certain, but pride rushed in to cover the crack. "I am investigating a suspicious circumstances call." "Suspicious to whom?" Maya asked. Across the street, Karen Whitmore looked down at her phone as if the question had found her porch by name. Holloway did not answer. Instead, he shifted his attention to Maya's leather bag resting on the hood of the sport utility vehicle. "What is in the bag?" Maya followed his gaze and instantly understood where he wanted the night to go. The bag held sealed federal documents, notes from the conference room, and materials tied to an inquiry that was not supposed to be discussed in a driveway under porch lights. "Work files," she said. "I am not giving you consent to search them." Holloway gave a humorless smile. "You keep talking about consent like this is a courtroom." Maya's eyes did not move. "No, I am talking about consent because this is my home." For 1 second, the whole street seemed to hold its breath. The sprinklers 2 houses down clicked in a slow rhythm. The patrol car radio murmured behind them. Somewhere, a garage door closed with a soft mechanical hum, as if another family had decided this was not their problem. Holloway stepped closer to the hood of the vehicle, not touching the bag, but close enough to make the intention clear. Maya moved only her voice. "Officer Holloway, I am advising you clearly. Do not open that bag." He froze at the sound of his own name. "How do you know my name?" Maya looked at the metal plate on his uniform. "You are wearing it." It should have been obvious, but embarrassment has a way of turning simple facts into insults. His face darkened with frustration, and he reached for his radio. "Dispatch, start me another unit to this location." Sullivan looked up from inside the patrol car, concern now visible on her face. "Grant," she called, forgetting rank for half a second. "Her license is valid." The property record comes back to Maya Ellison. Holloway did not turn around. "I said start another unit." Maya slowly placed her keys on the hood beside the bag, where the camera could see them. Then she lifted both empty hands slightly, not in surrender, but in documentation. "For the record," she said, "I have verified my identity, confirmed ownership, denied consent to search, and asked whether I am being detained." Holloway stared at her as though every word was building a wall he could not climb. Maya lowered her hands. Her phone buzzed inside her coat pocket again. This time, in the quiet between them, everyone heard it. The sound of Maya's phone buzzing seemed too small for the silence it created, but every person in the driveway reacted to it. Sullivan looked toward Maya's coat pocket. Holloway looked at Maya's face. Karen Whitmore leaned forward on her porch as if the right caller might explain the scene she had helped create. Maya did not reach for the phone. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times, each vibration pressing against the quiet like a warning from somewhere far beyond Briarwood Lane. Holloway pointed at her pocket. "Who is calling you?" Maya's expression did not change. "Someone from work." "Then answer it." "Am I free to move my hand into my pocket?" The question stopped him for half a second. Not because it was complicated, but because it forced him to recognize the box he had built around her. He had told her not to move. He had treated her as suspicious for standing still. Now he wanted her to act on command and pretend it had been voluntary. Sullivan stepped closer, her voice cautious. "Officer Holloway, she is asking for clarification." Holloway shot her a look. "I know what she is asking." Maya kept her hands visible beside the hood of the sport utility vehicle, palms relaxed, shoulders even. She had learned the power of stillness in rooms where men tried to interrupt her, minimize her, or bury the point under procedure. Silence was not emptiness. Silence was pressure. Silence made careless people fill the air with evidence. Her phone stopped buzzing. Then, Almost immediately, it began again. Holloway's patience thinned. You are making this harder than it needs to be. Maya finally looked at him with something colder than anger. No, officer. I am making it clear. Across the street, the man with the golden retriever had stopped pretending to check his phone. Another neighbor stood behind a half-open front door. The neighborhood had become an audience, but Maya understood audiences. She had seen juries watch a witness crumble under the weight of their own story. She had seen police supervisors grow pale when an old recording played at the wrong moment. She knew the difference between being humiliated and being underestimated. One burns. The other can be useful. Holloway took a slow breath and pointed toward the driveway. Step away from the vehicle. Maya did not move. Give me a lawful reason. Because I told you to. Sullivan's eyes flicked toward her body camera. That sentence had landed exactly where Maya needed it to land. Not in rumor. Not in memory. On record. Maya nodded once, almost to herself. Officer Holloway, I have complied with identification. I have not interfered with your investigation. I have not threatened you. I have not attempted to leave. I have stated that this is my home and provided documentation supporting that fact. I am asking again, am I being detained? The question hung under the garage light. Holloway looked at the body camera on Sullivan's chest, then at the small red blinking camera near the garage door, as if noticing for the first time that the night had more witnesses than neighbors. For a brief moment, uncertainty crossed his face. Then pride returned, stiff and stubborn. You are not free to leave until I say you are. Maya absorbed the words without flinching. The phone in her pocket buzzed a third time, and this time a voice message notification followed with a soft chime. She did not touch it. She did not smile. She only looked at Sullivan, then at Holloway, and said, Then I suggest you call your supervisor before you make this worse. For one long second, Holloway did nothing. He stood in the driveway with the authority of his uniform wrapped around him like armor, but Maya's words had reached the one place pride could not fully protect: procedure. A supervisor meant review. Review meant questions. Questions meant a report that could not be shaped entirely by his own voice. He looked toward Sullivan as if she had betrayed him simply by hearing the same facts he had heard. Call Sergeant Pike, he said finally, each word forced through his teeth. Sullivan nodded and stepped back toward the patrol car, but before she reached the radio, she glanced once more at the garage camera blinking above the open door. It was not hidden. It was not subtle. It was a small red eye watching over the driveway, recording the keys on the hood, the license in Holloway's hand, the mailbox with Maya's name, and every sentence he had chosen to speak after the truth became inconvenient. Maya saw Sullivan notice it. Holloway did not. He was too busy trying to regain control of a scene that had slipped out of his hands the moment Maya refused to become the frightened version of her he expected. You seem very confident, he said. Maya looked at him quietly. Confidence is not a crime. Neither is asking questions. Correct, she said. But ignoring answers can become one. His jaw tightened again. Behind him, Sullivan's voice floated from the patrol car as she requested a supervisor to respond to Briarwood Lane. She used the word homeowner. Maya heard it. Holloway heard it too, and the small change seemed to irritate him more than the call itself. Homeowner made the scene sound different. Homeowner placed Maya where she belonged. Homeowner made the original complaint seem thinner, weaker, almost embarrassing. Across the street, Karen Whitmore had stopped recording with her phone and now held it against her chest, her expression uncertain. The confidence she had when she called 911 was fading under the weight of what she had not said. She had seen Maya before. She knew the house was not empty. She knew the woman in the garage had not climbed a fence or broken a lock or slipped through a window. But fear, once dressed up as concern, often asks to be praised for the damage it causes. Maya turned her head slightly toward Karen, not enough to accuse her, only enough to acknowledge that she knew. Karen looked away first. Then Maya's phone buzzed again, this time sliding slightly inside her coat pocket. Holloway pointed at it. Answer it on speaker. Maya did not move. No, she repeated. You have not given me a lawful basis to monitor my private call. Holloway gave a short, disbelieving breath. You really do think you are in charge here? Maya's voice lowered, steady as stone. No, Officer Holloway. I think the law is. The words settled over the driveway like a gavel no one could see. Sullivan returned from the cruiser, face drawn tighter now. Sergeant Pike is on the way, she said. Estimated arrival is 6 minutes. Holloway gave a curt nod, but Sullivan did not step back this time. Her eyes moved to Maya's leather bag, then to the sealed red strip visible near the zipper, where 3 small words could be read in the garage light. Federal case material. Sullivan's breath caught almost silently. She knew enough to know that those words did not belong in an ordinary misunderstanding. Maya noticed. Still, she said nothing. The reveal was not ready. Not yet. The words federal case material sat half visible near the zipper of Maya's leather bag, quiet and dangerous in a way Holloway did not understand. Sullivan saw them and felt the night shift beneath her feet. She had been on the job long enough to know that certain labels did not appear by accident, and certain people did not carry sealed files home unless they were trusted with work far above a local patrol call. She looked from the bag to Maya, then to Holloway, and her voice came out softer than before. "Sir, we should wait for Sergeant Pike before taking any further action." Holloway did not even turn his head. "I did not ask for advice." Maya watched the exchange carefully. There it was, the small fracture. Not a rescue. Not yet. But recognition. A second officer had begun to see that this was no longer about a suspicious person. It was about an officer refusing to step back because stepping back would mean admitting he had been wrong in front of a black woman, a nervous neighbor, and a row of glowing windows. Holloway moved his flashlight toward the bag again. "You said those are work files." "That is correct." "What kind of legal work requires sealed material in a garage?" Maya held his gaze. "The kind you are not authorized to review." Sullivan inhaled quietly. Holloway heard the answer as arrogance because he had no room left to hear it as truth. He took one step toward the hood of the vehicle. Maya did not move toward him. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, "Officer Holloway, this is your second notice. Do not touch that bag." The garage camera blinked above them. The doorbell camera near the front porch watched from the side angle. Sullivan's body camera captured Holloway's hand hovering inches from the leather handle. 3 cameras. 3 silent witnesses. 3 records that would later matter more than every excuse spoken after the fact. Holloway paused just long enough to know he had heard her, then pulled his hand back as if the restraint had been his own idea. "You keep giving commands for someone who called herself a homeowner 5 minutes ago." Maya's eyes sharpened. "I did not call myself a homeowner. The property record did." Sullivan looked down, almost unable to hide the truth of it. From across the street, Karen Whitmore finally stepped off her porch and took 2 cautious steps toward the curb. "Officer," she called, her voice uncertain now. "I only said I was concerned. I did not know she actually lived there." Maya turned her head slowly. The sentence was not an apology. It was a retreat. It was someone trying to step away from the spark after watching the fire catch. Holloway glanced at Karen, irritated that the witness who had strengthened his suspicion was now weakening it in public. "Ma'am, go back inside," he said. Karen stopped, embarrassed, then backed toward her porch. Maya said nothing. She did not need to. Holloway had just shown the camera what mattered to him. Not the caller. Not the homeowner. Control. Sullivan checked the street and saw headlights turning the corner at the far end of Briarwood Lane. "Supervisor approaching," she said. Holloway straightened his uniform, suddenly aware of how he appeared. He lowered the flashlight completely. He adjusted his voice before Sergeant Pike even stepped out of the incoming vehicle. Maya noticed that too. The man who had spoken down to her under the garage light was now preparing a cleaner version of himself for another badge. But the cameras had already met the first version. Sergeant Daniel Pike arrived with the slow confidence of a man used to being the final voice on a street like Briarwood Lane. His cruiser stopped behind Holloway's patrol car, headlights cutting across the driveway and painting long white lines over the garage floor. He stepped out adjusting his duty belt, silver hair cropped close, expression neutral in the practiced way supervisors wear when they do not yet know which side of the story will protect them. Holloway met him halfway down the driveway before Maya could speak. That told her something. People who trust the facts do not rush to summarize them first. "Sergeant," Holloway said, lowering his voice but not enough to escape the cameras. "We responded to a suspicious person. Call. Subject was located inside the garage. She has been argumentative, refusing to cooperate fully, and there are sealed materials in the vehicle area she will not identify." Maya stood beneath the amber light and listened to her own life being rearranged into suspicion. Subject. Argumentative. Refusing. Not homeowner. Not verified resident. Not woman with matching identification, keys, property records, and her name on the mailbox. The language was the crime before the paperwork. Sergeant Pike looked past Holloway toward Maya. "Ma'am, are you Maya Ellison?" "Yes," she said. "This is my home." Sullivan stepped closer, her voice careful. "Sergeant, her driver license is valid and the address matches. The property record also comes back to her name." Holloway turned sharply. "I was still assessing the scene." Pike's eyes moved from Sullivan to the mailbox, then to the garage camera, then to Maya's work bag on the hood of the sport utility vehicle. He understood enough to slow down. "Miss Ellison, can you explain what is in the bag?" Maya remained still. "Work product. Confidential legal material. I have already denied consent to search." "Legal material for whom?" Pike asked. Maya's phone buzzed again inside her coat pocket before she could answer. This time the vibration was followed by the faint sound of a voice message being transcribed. The screen, angled outward through the open pocket, lit the inside of her coat with pale blue light. Sullivan saw the name first. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. Pike followed her gaze. Holloway did too, impatient at first, then suddenly focused. The screen read, "Rebecca Sloan, Deputy Assistant Attorney General." Maya did not reach for it. She let the name sit there in the open, not as a threat, not as a performance, but as the first clean crack in the story Holloway had tried to build. Pike's face changed by a fraction. Not fear. Recognition. "Miss Ellison," he said more slowly, "where exactly do you work?" Holloway gave a quick, nervous laugh. "Sergeant, she already said legal work. People say all kinds of things." Maya looked at him, then at Pike. "I am asking one more time for my detention status to be clarified on camera." Pike did not answer immediately. The quiet stretched. The neighbors watched. The patrol radio whispered. Holloway filled the silence because men like him cannot stand the sound of their own authority shrinking. "We can sort this out downtown," he said. "For now, she needs to come with us." Maya's eyes stayed on Pike. "On what charge?" No one answered. Holloway reached for the set of temporary restraints on his belt, not with force, but with the confidence of someone trying to turn uncertainty into control. Sullivan stepped forward. "Sergeant, I do not think we have grounds for that." Holloway froze, offended that the first challenge came from his own side. Pike lifted one hand, stopping both of them without touching anyone. And then, from the far end of Briarwood Lane, two black government vehicles turned the corner in perfect silence, their headlights steady, their arrival too precise to be coincidence. The two black vehicles rolled to a stop behind Sergeant Pike's cruiser with a calm that made the entire street feel suddenly unprepared. No sirens. No rush. No flashing display of power. Just dark paint, federal plates, and doors opening in sequence as if everyone inside already knew exactly why they were there. Holloway turned first, confusion tightening across his face. Sullivan turned next, and whatever doubt remained in her expression disappeared into something closer to alarm. Sergeant Pike did not move at all for a moment. He only watched as a woman in a navy suit stepped out of the lead vehicle, followed by two agents in plain dark jackets. The woman carried a badge case in one hand and a phone in the other. Her eyes moved across the driveway, taking in Maya beneath the garage light, the leather bag on the hood, the officers, the cameras, the neighbors, and the small disaster of judgment that had unfolded in front of a private home. "Maya," she said, her voice controlled but urgent. Maya finally let out the breath she had been holding for longer than anyone knew. "Rebecca." Holloway looked between them, his confidence trying to find a place to stand and finding none. The woman approached Sergeant Pike and opened her badge case. "Rebecca Sloan, Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice." The street seemed to go still around those words. Even Karen Whitmore stopped moving on her porch. Pike straightened immediately. "Ma'am." Rebecca did not waste time on ceremony. "This is Senior Counsel Maya Renee Ellison with the Civil Rights Division. She is assigned to a confidential federal matter, and the materials in that bag are protected. No local officer is authorized to search, seize, photograph, handle, or review them without federal clearance and written authorization." Sullivan lowered her eyes for half a second, not from shame exactly, but from the weight of realizing how close the night had come to crossing a line that could not be uncrossed. Holloway's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since he arrived, he had no prepared sentence. Pike looked toward Maya, then toward Holloway. "Officer Holloway, did you attempt to search the bag?" Holloway recovered just enough to defend himself poorly. "I was conducting a suspicious person investigation based on a citizen call." Rebecca looked past him to the mailbox with Maya's name, then to the house, then to the license still visible in Sullivan's hand. After her address was verified, Holloway's face tightened. "I had concerns." Maya spoke then, quiet enough that everyone leaned slightly inward to hear her. "His concerns survived my license, my keys, the property record, the mailbox, the garage remote, and my refusal to waive my rights." No one interrupted her. Not this time. Rebecca's expression hardened, not with anger, but with the colder discipline of someone who had read too many files that began with the same kind of sentence. She turned to Pike. "Preserve all body camera footage, dispatch audio, computer-aided dispatch notes, radio traffic, and any reports created in connection with this call. I also want the identity of the caller documented and the original call retained." Karen Whitmore stepped backward as if the porch beneath her had shifted. Holloway swallowed. "This is being blown out of proportion." Maya looked at him then, fully, finally, without raising her voice. "No, officer. For once, it is being recorded in proportion." The words settled over Briarwood Lane like nightfall. Holloway had arrived believing he was questioning someone who did not belong. Now he stood in the driveway of a high-ranking Department of Justice attorney, surrounded by cameras, supervisors, federal officials, and the evidence of every assumption he had mistaken for authority. Sergeant Pike understood the danger before Holloway did, because supervisors learn to recognize the moment a simple mistake becomes a documented failure. He turned slowly toward Holloway, and the authority in his voice was different now, stripped of friendship, stripped of department loyalty, reduced to procedure, because procedure was the only safe place left to stand. "Officer Holloway, step back from the homeowner and turn off your flashlight." Holloway looked stunned. "Sergeant, I was handling the call." Pike did not raise his voice. "That is not what I asked." The driveway went quiet again, but this silence was not the same as before. Earlier, it had pressed against Maya. Now it pressed against him. Holloway lowered the flashlight and took one step back, then another, each movement smaller than his pride wanted it to be. Rebecca Sloan nodded to one of the federal agents, who moved toward Maya's leather bag without touching it until Maya gave permission. Maya picked up her keys from the hood, then placed one hand lightly on the bag as if returning it to the world where it belonged. "This material stays with me," she said. Rebecca answered, "Correct." Then she turned to Pike. "Your department will receive a formal preservation notice tonight. No deletion, no edits, no supplemental reports written without original time stamps attached. Every camera angle, every radio call, every computer entry, every message connected to this stop will be retained." Sullivan swallowed hard, but she did not look away. Holloway tried to speak again. "I did not know who she was." Maya finally turned toward him. Her face was calm, but there was something in her eyes that made the sentence collapse before it could protect him. "That is the problem," she said. "You did not need to know who I was to treat me lawfully." The words did not cut because they were loud. They cut because they were true. Karen Whitmore stood frozen on her porch, and for the first time all night, she looked less like a concerned neighbor and more like a person beginning to understand that fear is not harmless when it borrows the voice of authority. Pike faced Sullivan. "Officer Sullivan, document your observations separately and accurately." Sullivan nodded. "Yes, Sergeant." Then Pike looked at Holloway. "You are relieved from this call pending administrative review. Return to your vehicle and wait." Holloway's face changed. Not anger now. Not confidence. Something smaller. Something exposed. He looked at Maya as if expecting triumph, but she gave him none. That was what unsettled him most. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She did not need the street to applaud her. Justice did not have to perform to be real. Rebecca stepped closer to Maya and lowered her voice. "Are you all right?" Maya looked at the garage, the open boxes, the photograph of her father, the house she had bought with years of work and discipline. "I am standing," she said. Rebecca nodded, understanding everything inside those 3 words. A few feet away, Holloway sat in his patrol car with the door open, no longer the man controlling the scene, but the subject of it. The red and blue lights still flashed across the brick walls, but they looked different now. Earlier, they had made Maya's home look like a place under suspicion. Now they lit the evidence of what suspicion had become when no one questioned it in time. By the time the federal vehicles left Briarwood Lane, the street no longer looked as perfect as it had an hour earlier. The lawns were still trimmed, the porch lights still glowed, and the white columns still stood in front of houses that seemed built to promise peace. But something invisible had been exposed beneath the quiet. It had been there all along, hiding in polite waves, cautious smiles, neighborhood watch emails, and the kind of suspicion that calls itself concern because concern sounds cleaner than bias. Maya Ellison stood in her garage while Rebecca Sloan finished speaking with Sergeant Pike near the curb. "Officer." Sullivan wrote her notes beside the patrol car, slowly and carefully, as if every sentence needed to choose truth over comfort. Officer Holloway remained seated in his cruiser, no longer speaking, no longer giving orders, no longer shaping the night with his voice. For the first time, he had to sit inside the silence he had created for someone else. Karen Whitmore crossed the street only after most of the officials had stepped away. She stopped at the edge of Maya's driveway, cardigan pulled tightly around her shoulders, phone lowered at her side. "Miss Ellison," she said, her voice thin, "I am sorry. I thought something was wrong." Maya looked at her for a long moment. She could have answered with all the things a person carries after being doubted in her own doorway. She could have listed the years she had lived there, the packages Karen had seen on her porch, the mornings they had stood 10 feet apart while collecting mail. Instead, Maya said, "Something was wrong." Karen's face tightened. Maya continued, calm but unyielding. "But it was not me." The words were not cruel. That made them heavier. Karen nodded once, unable to defend herself against a truth spoken without anger. Then she turned and walked back across the street, smaller somehow beneath the porch light she had watched from all night. Maya stepped deeper into the garage and picked up the framed photograph of her father. The brown paper had torn slightly at one corner, revealing his hand resting on the courthouse rail, strong and steady despite everything he had endured. She brushed dust from the glass with her thumb and smiled faintly, not because the night had been easy, but because she was still standing in the house she had earned, holding the legacy of a man who taught her that dignity did not need permission. Rebecca came to the garage entrance and asked, "Do you want someone to stay with you?" Maya shook her head. "No. I want the preservation notice sent before midnight, and I want Holloway's prior complaints reviewed with the same attention he gave my garage." Rebecca almost smiled. Already in motion, Maya looked once more toward the street where the patrol lights had finally gone dark. The brick walls returned to their natural color. The garage camera blinked red above her, faithful and quiet, a witness no one could intimidate. Holloway had arrived believing the badge made him the law. Karen had called believing fear made her reasonable. The neighborhood had watched believing silence made it innocent. But truth had a way of entering spaces where people thought it did not belong. It did not shout. It did not beg. It simply stood there until every lie ran out of breath. Maya pressed the garage button, and the door began to lower, slow and steady, closing between her home and the street that had questioned it. Just before the light disappeared, she whispered to the empty driveway, "He came looking for a suspect. He left as evidence."